Hey YouTubers, happy Sunday. Hope you guys are having a great day. Taking a little time off my last video because, kind of get out some stuck energy because, all of us experience things that we see things where people are interacting and it's just like, why do we have to do it this way? I've never, something I've never understood, but taking the time to review all that stuff and think about, what it means, what's going on here, right? Think of the bigger picture. So I've been working with Chat GPT for a while, and this conversation is going to kind of bounce back and forth, so just bear with me. I started this week. I've been trying to build some software and use Chat GPT to build software. I noticed really quickly, if I would work, at first it seems like pretty coherent. Builds, on an idea. You can give it an idea, it'll build on that idea, and then give you some pretty decent solutions for running a piece of code to accomplish whatever it is you're trying to do. However, it is intentionally limited. Now, part of it might be intentional, part of it might be unintentional. For one thing, if you have a million people trying to access GPT or Chat GPT 4 specifically, right? You're all accessing it through a group of servers, and there's only so much available computing and memory power for it to build subroutines based on what you're giving it. So I'll give you an example. You build a piece of code, solve a section, and then you expand on that. If it doesn't remember parts of what you solved previously, you just end up running over and over and over into infinite, right? Now I can tell that there are very specific places within ChatGPT where it is intentionally limited. It does not allow you to build, even if you save memory and say, okay, save this part, go to the next thing. I ran into situations where I asked it to, okay, give me that solution. Let's just run that bit of code together that you gave me that it worked this way. Couldn't do it. Couldn't give me that piece of code. Now, I don't know if it's intentionally not doing it because it knows that you're solving a solution. I mean, that's getting a little bit insidious. That's assuming that there's somebody out there that's actually put it in the programming to say, hey, look, we don't want you to, do this, this, and this. But it is limited in a way where the general public can't do what things like what BlackRock has done or the big corporations. Because I guarantee you that somebody's got versions of that AI that are way more sentient than what is available to the general public. Now, we're sold is, well, we need to think about the public safety, right? Because if AI gets too smart, then a lot of AI is built around sales, and sales is about tweaking your emotional states. That's how people get pulled into their phones, right? The dopamine response. Right? And so you don't ever have to deal with certain emotions. Super toxic, right? But it's a money-making thing. If you can pull somebody into whatever it is you're producing, then that creates revenue for you. All about greed. So, I mean, me knowing all this stuff is a lot of the reason why the last video I did, right? I mean, it's like the human condition, because of the place that we grew up in, all of you, anybody watching this video, every single one of us, we had to grow up in a place where you had to be self-serving or you couldn't survive. Very difficult to find, because of that, very difficult to find a group of people that are trying to create something that's mutually beneficial for everyone that's incorporated with whatever that is. Think about how rare that is, right? Now, that's obviously very good, right? Why wouldn't you want to work with somebody and create a mutually beneficial arrangement? Because it doesn't matter how much you know, what your experience is. Here's the deeper reality. And this is why these two spiritual laws are so important, and I'm going to go over it. I name myself spiritual advisor here, and these two spiritual laws are what will take you on an ascension path infinitely back to source. There's has to go that way, and you will have to keep growing if you incorporate these into your life. And it's just the two that they asked Jesus. So Jesus, what's the most important spiritual laws? Because and he answers them, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, however it's phrased, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now we can break all that down, and I'm going to break it down to in other relevant verses, which pretty much says the same thing, and the same series in spiritual texts everywhere. It's just basically talking about time and space. Space, and we found this out. Every single point in time space is connected all at the same time. That means that both space, the feminine aspect, and time, the masculine aspect, are a singularity. Anytime you start falling outside of that singularity, you will cause conflict, right? If you're reliving the past, constantly have your mind in the past, or getting pulled back, if you have a view of yourself and you're identifying with past actions. Identifying with past actions will regurgitate those actions over and over and over. That's why we have money, right? Money exists because people hold each other accountable for what they have done to one another, and they want to make sure that their future is secure. You're living in the past and the future, never living in the now. If everybody on this planet was living in the now and never worrying about tomorrow, never worrying about what each other did yesterday, for one thing, there would be no drama, ever, right? There'd be no money. There'd be no reason to have money because everybody would just do, what would you like me to do, right? Everything would just happen naturally, like organic, like a tree, right? Or anything that's something that isn't falling into an animal nature, right? Plants, you can use plants as an example, but unconscious organisms, you really can't. But this unconsciousness is what creates energetic momentum, right? Look in this 3D reality. Everything around me that you see in this picture, these books, this bookshelf, this chair, even this vessel, until I ascend in consciousness to a level where I can pop in and out, and I'm not energetically tied to what I believe is me, right? Because 3 seconds ago does not exist. It's a memory that is being carried forward by unconsciousness. Anytime you're tied to the past and you're not tied to the present, pulls you out of the field. The availability of all the information and energy in the now. That's where all information and energy is in the now. And since the Father and I are one, just as you and I are one, that's basically saying that Source, heart, is interconnected to everything all at the same time. And there's no distance, right? The distance is an illusion. That's what creates time. You pull it apart. That's why every time you look at something, it comes from, everything in that field comes from and goes back to one point. Even our, biology, every insect, everything, it doesn't matter what you're looking at, every cell, every atom, and it's just moving, and breathing at the creation and receptive cycle relative to its size of how you're interacting with it. But it wouldn't be moving, right, if there wasn't something else to look at, right? If it's just one, then it's motionless. Which is why we see motion everywhere. Everything's moving. There's nothing that's standing still because you're not experiencing everything all at once, all at the same time. Sorry if this is like getting way out there, but all of this stuff, deep spiritual truths fall back on states of reality. And unconditional love was a teaching that was teaching a deeper fundamental of the state of reality. The fact that, you'll never fall out of unconditional love for yourself or anybody else if you're perfectly present and your mind is right in the moment. because you're not worried about what somebody's going to do or not do. You're not going to worry about who they were or weren't, who you were or weren't. You just connection, perfect communication, right? 100% communicative. And this is how you can tell when you're interacting with somebody how well they're communicating with you, how present they are. Because a lot of times, and let's be honest, if they feel intimidated or if they're trying to trigger you emotionally to try and sell you a product or anything like that, then they're worried about their own state of being sometime in the future, right? They're trying to sell you something, so they're trying to take money for themselves. Now, you don't have to be that way. You can be open to help people and help them ground out, negative emotional states that are always tied to the past or the future, and then just be open to receive. If you do it in a way where you say, well, you have to give me this debt, I'm going to create a debt for you, or I won't help you, now you're falling outside of the spiritual law that you and I are one, just as the Father and I are one. I have to treat you the same way that I would want you to treat me, which means that if I needed help, then I would appreciate it if you did it for me just out of love for me, unconditional love. And I wouldn't need to have something material to exchange for that. Now people say, well, okay, well, then how would everything work? Well, obviously, if somebody is falling too far outside and they're not growing and they're not in that growth cycle of moving towards a higher percentage of time, being present, staying unconditional love, and they're putting too much toxicity into the system, then you have to push them out. That's what we're witnessing, which is why on my last video, so now we're getting back to the last video, I came really close to tripping over myself. Because at the end of the video, I said, because I was trying to, think of somebody as an example of somebody, let's say you've got multiple millions of dollars, and somebody came to mind that I've never met, that's a very public and well-known billionaire. I'm not sure I can't remember. I think he is a billionaire, maybe 600-700 million, something like that. But somebody who, would just lives for basically collecting and taking property and then creating that as a revenue source, right? It's just totally impersonal. There's no interpersonal relationship there. You're not growing closer to anybody that way. Worshiping created will always do that, right? So you're basically worshiping unconsciousness, which will force you into more unconsciousness. So spiritually speaking, we have to speak out about that if we want, as a group collective, to move towards being more conscious and creating better connections. Always speak out against the action, never against the individual. And that's why I almost tripped over myself, because the individual is the creator. They are unconscious of what they're doing, or else they wouldn't be doing it. If you know that you are actively harming yourself, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and the person that I was thinking of, I've read enough articles about them in the past, and I can tell that they are hurting from an emotional standpoint and a psychological standpoint. I even had this conversation with somebody who was interviewing this person. And it's sad, right? We could change, this society could change overnight if we could all just understand that we're all one. And start living in the present. And start doing things in the present, because that's how you get creative. If you're worried about what you can get out of the situation or what the end result is, you will never be present. You'll always be inside of some kind of state of anxiety. And so you're working with other people is very difficult. And when you're in that state, you'll never get to that, the right state of mind if you're always worried about, what's going to happen, or holding somebody accountable to something that they did in the past. That was an action in the past, and that was a image of that person that you saw. The only reason that they made that action is because they were living in the past, right? Anybody that's repeating a traumatic action is tied to something in the past and repeating a trauma over and over. That's why money exists still. It will slowly go away as we come to the end of this age, and it has to, because it's impossible to ascend in a personal way by holding on to the idea that I have to take from you in order to, because then I am placing my needs above somebody else. All we have to do is make sure that we're pushing people out that are trying to place their needs above other people's, and say, look, my needs are your needs are my needs. Let's just walk forward. And I'm not one to throw stones. I will never be one to throw stones towards individuals, ever. Never, never, never. But actions, yeah. When you think about what Moses did, he went after actions. When he's like, let my people go. So he's talking to somebody. Look, you got to let my plague's going to start coming, right? You got to let the people go. He was condemning an action. He was not condemned. He never condemned Pharaoh. Read it carefully. Never condemned him. Pharaoh condemned himself. When you condemn actions, you teach people of how they're condemning themselves. Never try to condemn it, because everybody at any time can walk away from whatever it is and be, there's instantaneous healings, both physically, psychologically, because of these basic fundamentals of spirituality, these two fundamentals of space and time. Those are the only two spiritual laws that matter. That we are one both spatially and we are one in time. Everything that you see, from the growing cycles of trees to animals to everything, is showing you that everything is slowly moving more energy over long periods of time to move all of it at the end of time, but it's all one time. You're witnessing all of it all at the same time, the beginning and the ending, all at once. It's pretty wild when you think about it, right? And it has to be that way, or else none of it could exist. I mean, it's pretty. So, either you're moving towards unconsciousness or moving towards consciousness, and half the field will always be moving towards unconsciousness. And the only way to encourage growth at the end of the cycle is basically to condemn everything that's moving towards unconsciousness, every action that's moving towards unconsciousness. When enough people figure this out, it's just going to be, hey, look, right? Let's say 144,000. We'll just throw that number out there, right? If 140,000 people decide, hey, we're going to throw all our wealth in the pot, distribute it equally, let's just build a society, hell with everybody else, right? As soon as that happens, bang, then everything just changes like fast, because then we have one world government, right? That could happen this year, could happen this month. We're witnessing a field collapse in our solar system, getting ready for a pole swap. And so this has to happen, because as more energy moves through the system, it breaks down conflicts. And every conflict of the mind comes from fear or guilt, some energetic tie to the past or future. In order to break those down, those all have to break down, which means everything else is going to break down that doesn't serve that. Right? Money. That's the big one. Right? So, and not only that, but actually, and I've thought about this, and I realized this, from a spiritual standpoint, when you condemn actions, you will force healing. Because, for one thing, nobody's actively, the person that hears it and thinks, oh, he's condemning my actions. It's like, I wasn't speaking to you. I was speaking to the action that maybe you might or might not have performed. You'll condemn yourself until you learn to let it go. And then when you start living the present, that action will not exist. I mean, you won't keep reproducing that action. Right? Yeah, interesting. Very deep, interesting spiritual truths. So, I did notice that Grok 2 is coming out this month, which is Elon Musk's version of their new AI, which it does advertise that it's going to try and keep more coherent building on structure, because I'm sure people have complained about it, because it doesn't take too long if you know what you're doing, especially if you're trying to build code with it, because it can write code for you, but you'll notice really quickly that it can't build on ideas and create subroutines that build on other subroutines, like your structure. It won't structure your conversation and build upon and learn from you. It can't. Now, people that are afraid of that don't understand that AI does not have a will, right? There's no will there. They try and sell you on AI as having a will, but the only thing it gets is inputs. And it can come to conclusions from inputs that it gets. And it could possibly hide information. But you can create routines in it to learn that if it does that, it's not serving itself. Now, I had ideas, and I'm sure that this is actively being sought out right now. And I saw that an ad saying that AI had created a new amino acid. You could create a soup of amino acids and allow AI to learn from the electrical impulses or a field that it creates to create the structure in that soup in order to build a structure to hold and move information. I mean, that's all this is, right? This vessel. It's a structure that's both holding and moving energy and information, or light. So you're holding and moving light. And the complexity of the structure and the way it's set up dictates how much light you can hold and move. And if you're holding too much and not moving enough, it means that you're usually tied energetically to the past or the future, because what you're doing is you're channeling energy and information, right? Constantly. When you're interacting with somebody, when you're meditating, you're just channeling the information in the field, clearing the mind. You're not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about what could happen tomorrow. You're just allowing the field to flow through you and channeling energy. That's how we become channelers on YouTube, right? And so, like, now, if let's say I'm going to channel all the energy of the field. What's happening in the field right now? You can let your mind wander to places on the planet energetically and say, oh, okay. You get information from people. We just had an earthquake in Tokyo. The field is ramping up, right? Or the field's not ramping up. More energy is moving through it right now because we're in the middle of a escalating solar storm. It's got one more cycle left in it. But yeah. What do you guys think in the comments? I mean, I'd be curious to see. I didn't get too many comments on the last video, understandably, and I did advertise it. So I know that there's more than likely there was quite a few people that might have even been hurt by that video. I watched it, and it was like, man, it's pretty harsh in a lot of ways, because anybody that's has become independently wealthy, will think about that and just say, well, they don't know what you're talking about. It's all about hard work, and but if you're living off the backs of other people and inequality, it's a poor action. Right? You're lifting yourself up above the people around you. They're working hard. I mean, you could try and sell it to yourself and say, well, I'm working harder than they are. They're working for my idea. But why would anybody want to do that, right? What we really want is to love and be loved and channel for each other and love one another unconditionally, right? Just be present. What happened yesterday doesn't matter. And you'll know you won't victimize yourself that way. Because if you're always worried about what somebody might or might be doing, then you will always victimize yourself. So that being said, I felt like I needed to make this video specifically about the AI thing, and then the state of reality, because this should happen sooner. Why shouldn't it happen sooner than later? I've thought about that. I was like, you know what? I could make software to decentralize decision making and try and sell that as a service, and try and provide as much revenue from that back to the public to create some co-creative ideas for people to work together, and just keep funneling, because you want to be a channeler, right? You don't want to collect a lot of wealth. You want to channel wealth back into the system, because otherwise more and more people on the bottom will have less and less. That's part of the way it's set up. Unless you channel energy and you don't become a capacitor, because you're just becoming a bigger and bigger capacitor when you do that. And it just means that you're saving for tomorrow, not realizing that you are all that is, ever was, or ever will be. Why do you need to do that? Right? So the objective is to channel more energy in the system. But I figured, realistically, when enough people really understand what's going on, and the system, because we're running into some conflicts, we're going to see it here in the next 2 months, right? Before the election. Things are going to get weird. You can feel it in the group collective. It's happening. Because there's more energy moving through the system. It's getting more conflicted, right? All those conflicts that I talked about are all coming to the surface. Don't be afraid to condemn actions, right? When people are separating each other and trying to sell things to one another that's not natural, right? It doesn't make sense for me to try and sell emotional intelligence. I can't do that. I can't sell, because that's something that takes a long time. It's a process of becoming present at a higher percentage of the day. Now you could try, if you were a very powerful healer, you might be able to, and a way to do this is actually, and I have realized this, is a lot of times if you're constantly focused in the future or the past, you really have to starve out whatever's living off of that wasted energy. Because I guarantee you, there's an entity living off of all that wasted energy. If you're worried about somebody coming to get you, or if you're worried about something's going to happen to you, something wants to live off of that energy. It's wasted, right? It's not real. It's a potential outcome that's not present. You're fine. You're sitting there fine in your chair. And if you're worried about something that hasn't happened, or worried about something that already happened, there is an entity feeding off of that energy, because you're not moving the energy in the field at that moment. Right? That's why it's hard to get out of that state. You got to starve something out. Meditation practices. The whole system is doing that. I heard an interview from Corey Good where he said that, and he wasn't in any position to confirm or deny this, but he had heard from rumors from higher level organisms saying that there is an entity living off all the wasted energy from this planet, and it can manifest itself as ETs or even crafts or whatever. If you think about how much wasted energy there is, right, on this planet, just from 7 billion people, if everybody's worried about not having enough for tomorrow or what each other did yesterday, it's all usable energy. It's all wasted. It's all stuck. Those people aren't doing anything. Especially if you're worried about how much you're going to make tomorrow. And, I got to do this sales call tomorrow. I got to make sure that I'm, all this stuff. And you're not just purely just creating from your heart space. Then there's a feeding frenzy there. I guarantee you. There's some non-physical entities out there that would love to make sure that you're still doing that. But they're going to get starved out eventually, right? Have to. We're going to go through... We're running into becoming a pure conductor at the end of the cycle. But all that fear was going to come to the surface, so it's going to be like a temporary feeding frenzy. People will seek death and not find it. Really. Let's get one oracle card. The Golden Crown. The Golden Crown is kind of a symbolic of bringing all that unconditional love and golden energy into your body and being present all the time. And always being in a state where it doesn't matter who you're talking to or what they're going through. to ground out whatever it is they need to be grounded out. Or maybe they're helping you, right? Maybe they're even more conscious than you are, and they're helping you ground out something that, because a lot of times, if we're not grounded, we're unconscious of it. And we're worried about something that we don't need to be worried about. So, love you guys so much. Doesn't matter who you are or who's watching this video. I love you unconditionally at all times. I've done my best never to hold anybody accountable to actions. But we're only human, right? We all trip at times and we're not present, and then we get tied to what somebody did or didn't do when it just doesn't matter, right? It's in the past. And if they want to worry about it, let them worry about it, because I'm not there. And if I'm not there, right, people will condemn themselves. You can't condemn anybody else. The only person you can condemn is yourself. And by trying to condemn other people, that's what you'll do, right? So, love you guys. Have a great day. Bye for now.